Welcome to Tax Breaks. I'm your host, Kelly Phillips. I'm a senior writer for Forbes, and you might have seen me around the web as Tax Girl. I'm also a tax attorney, and I work with tax professionals and taxpayers like you every day. There's a lot to talk about, so let's get started. The season has begun. No, not tax season. That opened on January 27, 2025, and is nearly over. I'm talking about baseball season. If you're a regular reader or you follow me on social media, you know that I'm a huge baseball fan. I love baseball, so of course I was front and center on opening day. My Phillies had a real nail biter, but they pulled it off. I've mentioned before that I attribute my love of baseball to my grandfather. Like many Americans, when my grandfather reached what we would consider retirement age, he was still working. In his mid-70s, he would suit up as a security guard and work long nights at the local hospital. He was gone a lot. But on those hot, sticky summers in coastal North Carolina, when he had a free moment, he and I would sit and watch baseball on the old TV in the family room. And for the record, he was a Cubs fan, not a Phillies fan. Those are some of the most special moments of my life, and I'm sure it's why I love baseball to this day. I'll bet that you have a similar story, and maybe it's not baseball. It could be another sport like basketball, football, or in the case of my girls, ice hockey. Sports are a little different today, including college sports. Players are now both student athletes and paid athletes, earning potentially significant amounts of money from name, image, and likeness, or NIL. The NIL income has significant tax consequences, and many states are using their tax laws to maximize NIL's efficiency and effectiveness for their public universities. One that's making news right now, Arch Manning. Yes, of those Mannings. According to On3 NIL valuations, the presumptive starting quarterback for the University of Texas next season has an NIL valuation of $6.5 million per season. During his recruitment, Manning chose to play at Texas over the University of Alabama and the University of Georgia. While it's likely that Manning considered many factors when choosing Texas, it's possible that tax played a part in his decision. It's a certainty that Manning will be a darling on social media, garnering him potentially additional significant income, so long as he's not in Italy. Italian tax authorities are advancing a landmark value-added tax, or VAT, case against big tech. That is sort of like sales tax, although there are some key differences. Here's what those Italian tax authorities are arguing. When users sign up for a social media platform, they receive a valuable service in exchange for their personal data. Because that exchange involves consideration, again, you're paying for services with personal data instead of money, it should be, they claim, subject to VAT. As a result, Italy has reportedly handed Meta a bill for €900 million, with smaller claims lodged against the parent companies of X and LinkedIn. Since VAT is harmonized across the European Union, this isn't necessarily a local tax issue. It's a potential template for taxing tech giants across the community. Figuring out reporting and tax obligations may be difficult for some U.S. businesses abroad, but in the U.S., U.S. companies are getting a break. U.S. businesses no longer have to comply with the Beneficial Ownership Information, or BOI, reporting filing requirements of the Corporate Transparency Act, or CTA. That's the result of an interim final rule issued this month by the Trump administration that removes the requirement for U.S. companies and U.S. persons to report beneficial ownership information to the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, or FinCEN. If finalized, the rule, which was an effort to crack down on money laundering and other potential crimes, would exempt more than 99% of entities from the reporting requirement that Congress passed in 2021. While the Trump administration has been busy cutting reporting requirements for corporations, it has been making a slew of proposed rule changes and personnel cuts at the Social Security Administration, or SSA, which could create more administrative burdens for individuals. Frank Bisagnano, President Trump's nominee to lead the Social Security Administration, faced questions about these issues during his confirmation hearing to lead the agency responsible for paying $1.6 trillion per year to 72.5 million beneficiaries, including retirees, the disabled, and children who are the survivors of covered workers. One controversial proposal being pushed by the Elon Musk-led Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, would limit Social Security phone services, forcing Americans to sign up for benefits or switch the bank accounts where they receive them to do it online or in person at a Social Security office. But under questioning, Bisagnano described phone service as, quote, a part of meeting beneficiaries where they want to get met, end quote. Apparently, folks at the SSA took their potential future boss at his word. A day after the hearing, the agency changed course, announcing that it would now allow phone service for certain beneficiaries. The agency announced that as of April 14, 2025, those who are applying for Social Security Disability Insurance, or SSDI, Medicare, or Supplemental Security Income, or SSI, and who cannot use a personal online Social Security account can complete their claim entirely by telephone. Those applying for regular retirement or survivor benefits, however, will have to do it online or go to a Social Security Administration office. The Social Security news didn't stop there. This past week, President Trump signed an executive order declaring that the federal government must stop issuing paper checks by September 30, 2025, in favor of direct deposit, prepaid cards, or some other digital account option. That includes Social Security benefits as well as payments from other agencies, including tax refunds. According to the order, using paper checks is expensive and wasteful, and Department of the Treasury checks are 16 times more likely to be reported lost or stolen, returned undeliverable, or altered compared to electronic funds transfers, or EFT. The new rule also applies to federal government receipts, like paying taxes. Of course, federal agencies have been fighting the battle against paper for years. My favorite paper check rule: in 2015, the Federal Reserve announced that it would no longer accept checks larger than $99,999,999. Luckily, this hasn't been a problem for me. Speaking of taxes, there are just a couple weeks left in tax season. Enjoy the rest of the tax, baseball, college basketball, your favorite season here season. Now let's answer a taxpayer question. This week, a reader asked, I just received a retroactive bonus for the 2024 year, but I've already filed my taxes. Do I need to amend my return? So first of all, congrats on the bonus. But here's my answer. Luckily, you don't need to do anything for 2024. Your employer must report payments in the year in which they are paid. For you, that's 2025, even if the payments are attributable to work that was performed in a previous year. So you'll report your bonus on your 2025 tax return, even though it was for work that happened in 2024. That's true for bonuses as well as your regular wages. Those hours that you worked on December 30 or December 31st, 2024, but you were paid in 2025, those get reported in 2025 on your 2025 tax return. This also applies to corrected wages. That's when your boss pays you later for wages that were underpaid in a previous year. The same rule generally applies to other payments as well, including Social Security benefits that are received as a lump sum payment. You typically receive the taxable portion of the lump sum payment that you receive in the current year in your income for that year, even if the payment covers benefits paid for other years. If you have a tax question or matter that you think we should consider in the next episode, please let us know. You can find more information in the show notes. Of course, if you follow me on Forbes, you know that I love looking at statistics and a good map or chart. This week, I'm focusing on tax filing season statistics. Stop me if you've heard this before, but taxpayers do not appear to be excited to file this filing season. IRS data from the 7th week of the tax filing season, the week ending March 14, 2025, shows that numbers for tax filing and processing of tax returns for individuals have dipped again, a trend that hasn't changed since the season opened on January 27, 2025. The data shows that the IRS received 70,370,000 individual income tax returns as of March 14, 2025, compared to 71,587,000 as of March 15, 2024. That's more than 1 million fewer individual income tax returns to date in 2025 as compared to 2024. Two more sets of data points stand out to me. First, the number of e-filed returns prepared by professionals is nearly neck and neck with the number of e-filed returns that are self-prepared. The IRS received 34,467,000 individual income tax returns e-filed by tax professionals and 34,880,000 self-prepared e-filed returns. That's consistent with predictions. In January, the IRS noted that it expected about half of all tax returns to be filed this year with the help of a tax professional. Second, tax refund numbers are up. That's true not only for the number of tax refunds issued to date, despite the dip in filing, but also for the dollar values involved. The average tax refund so far this year is $3,271. The direct deposit numbers are even a little higher at $3,330. Now it's time for a little tax trivia. All this talk about Social Security has made me wonder, who was the first Social Security beneficiary? Your choices are A. Ernest Ackerman, B. Fred Happel, C. Grace Dorothy Owen, D. John David Sweeney. I'll give you a minute. The answer is A. Ernest Ackerman. In 1937, retired Cleveland motorman named Ernest Ackerman became Social Security's first beneficiary. A nickel was withheld from his wages for the one day he worked under the new program. In return, he received a one-time lump sum retirement payment of 17 cents. Not a bad return. The other choices happened to be real people with a connection to Social Security. Fred Happel of Albany, New York, designed the original Social Security card in 1936, and he was paid $60 for his work. Grace Dorothy Owen of Concord, New Hampshire, applied for her Social Security number on November 24, 1936. She received the lowest Social Security number, 001010001. The lowest area numbers were assigned to New Hampshire. This was apparently done so that the number could be given to the Social Security Board chairman and three-time governor of New Hampshire, John G. Winnett. However, Winnett declined. That meant that the first applicant from New Hampshire, that's Grace Dorothy Owen, was issued the card with the lowest possible number. Owen wasn't, however, the first person to receive a Social Security number. That was John David Sweeney of New Rochelle, New York, who received the first Social Security number 055090001 on December 1st, 1936. Sweeney died of a heart attack in 1974 at the age of 61 without ever receiving any benefits. His widow, however, was able to receive his benefits based on his work until she died in 1982. Now it's time for a deeper dive, and it's a look at the changes at the IRS. Acting IRS Commissioner Melanie Krause has told employees that the Treasury hasn't yet provided the agency with its reduction in force, or RIF, plan yet. There are still discussions regarding the scope and how many employees are going to be cut. It's also unclear whether those RIF numbers will include the 7,000 probationary employees who were terminated and subsequently reinstated. They're currently on paid administrative leave. Tax professionals, including me, are concerned about the effect that these cuts may have on service and collections, especially given that the terminations so far have disproportionately affected enforcement personnel, like revenue agents and revenue officers. There are also concerns about leadership. Former Missouri Representative Billy Long has been picked by President Trump to serve as the next IRS commissioner, following the departures of former IRS Commissioner Danny Werfel and former Acting Commissioner Doug O'Donnell. Lawmakers on the Hill are still waiting for all of the paperwork for Long, and they haven't scheduled a hearing date yet. Yet another concern is the security of taxpayer data. The DOGE team reportedly wants to use IRS data to investigate potential fraud at the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP, currently known as food stamps. Prior analysis at the Urban Institute, focused on improving tax administration, shows that even if IRS did share that data, Differences between how tax data and SNAP programs are administered likely make the data of limited value. Why? They don't use the same data points. Now for something a little more brief, some quick tax and accounting newsmakers. In an op-ed for Bloomberg Tax, former IRS Commissioner Danny Werfel explains that the IRS has, over the years, given some of its employees access to taxpayer data. But he notes that it was rare for anyone at the IRS to have access to all of the data. Werfel says that even if he, as the former IRS commissioner, had requested access to all of the data in all of the IRS systems, quote, the agency's data security team would rightfully say no. I would have no compelling need, and there was no legal basis for me to demand it, end quote. That's why he says DOE's requests to access all data should be met with questions. The 50th anniversary of the Earned Income Tax Credit, or EITC, was Saturday, March 29, 2025. The EITC was originally signed into law by President Gerald Ford on March 29, 1975. What began as a modest means of providing financial support for working families has evolved into one of the federal government's largest anti-poverty programs. As of December 2024, approximately 23 million workers and families received about $64 billion from the EITC. And finally, Oregon recently celebrated registering more than 100,000 electric cars. The move towards fuel-efficient cars has resulted, however, in a dip in tax revenues, since electric vehicles, about 5% of the cars registered in Oregon over the past decade, aren't subject to the gas tax. That's causing state tax officials to consider what to do next. And that's a wrap. Thanks to all of you who continue to watch, comment, and share the show. I'd love to know what you thought of this episode. You can send an email with your feedback to kerb@forbes.com. And if you liked it, please share. You can find the link to the audio of each episode on Forbes.com. And thanks for listening, because paying taxes is painful, but hearing about them shouldn't have to be.